boop, boop, boop. Breaking updates, very important.
She's also just a spoiled, entitled, narcissistic brat.
But I was basically the only person in the theater. Very few people wanted to see this. Even the little kids who like Disney movies, even they don't seem to be turning up in droves for the movie because the movie is really, really bad.
And to everyone who hates when I win, the winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her.
Oh my God.
And I can only hope.
What does that mean?
That despite my flaws, and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them, that at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
This is what theaters look like across the world, and it just keeps getting worse. The memes. Let's say that you were in a Hollywood movie, and the trailer for that movie dropped on YouTube, and it instantly became the #1 most downvoted trailer in the history of the platform.
The movie was absolutely terrible. It's not the single worst movie I've ever seen, but in every way that the movie differed from the beloved 1937 original, it was worse.
The reason we had Rachel Zegler on the docket is she's an asshole. I think it's fair to say that no one can stand the star of this movie.
She continued celebrating herself by posting that she's in the #1 movie in the world, which is a remarkable thing to post when you are the laughingstock of an entire industry. This is what narcissism looks like. Narcissism for 200.
Now, ever since the debut of Snow White, it has been nothing more than a box office disaster, not just for the Walt Disney Company and Bob Iger as the CEO, but also for Rachel Zegler.
How it was so outdated and how Rachel Zegler disrespected the original and a classic from Walt Disney, something that completely saved Disney and changed the company and changed animation in general.
Because Rachel Zegler is a PR nightmare.
This is truly, like, she has to go. I'm sorry, Disney. She has to go.
This movie was like you took the original Snow White and just put everything through this filter. So from the casting to the class politics, it all was just bad.
Now, if there's one thing to be gleaned from this, it's actually the sheer quality of the negative reviews. So let me read you some quotes. It says, "I paid nothing to watch the trailer, but I want my money."
Oh, that's nice. Nice job.
The movie has all kinds of problems that could be pinned partly on the producer. Like, the producer did not do a good job. Nobody who produced this movie did a good job.
This is someone who is as entitled as, I don't need your business.
And if you disagree with this sentiment, just hit the unfollow button. I don't need your business.
You know what? Maybe Disney does. Maybe you're a tool, you're a pawn in this film. You didn't write it. You didn't direct it. You have nothing to do with the creation of Snow White. Right. You should shut up and do the job.
So the movie had all kinds of problems creatively and conceptually, but there's no doubt that she drove the final nail into this movie's coffin. She probably drove the final 2 or 3 nails into the coffin.
There's a reason why the public has shifted. If you can't avoid this movie, you absolutely should, because it's absolute trash.
Hello, Disney. You're going to have to redo your film again, because this woman is a pig, and you fired Gina Carano for far less than this nonsense.
I was referring to the movie as sand beige, and it was so noticeable off the top, but it's no really knock on her. If you did the autobiography of Malcolm X, would you cast Tom Hanks? If you remade Moana, would you cast a little Irish guy? No, you wouldn't. So that was off the top.
And I get it, there's a difference between spoiling and whatever, but to go out and badmouth everybody and talk smack about, older movies in the same franchise, the canon story, I guess?
Yeah.
I don't know, dude. I feel like they would have had...
Imagine landing the role of a lifetime, becoming the next Disney princess, starring in a live-action remake of Snow White, only to have it spiral into a career-destroying fiasco before the movie even sees the light of day. Rachel Zegler was supposed to be Hollywood's next golden girl, a rising star with the world at her feet, but instead, she ended up alienating an entire fan base, infuriating Disney purists, and turning herself into one of the internet's biggest laughingstocks. And the worst part? It all unraveled before a single frame of the movie hit the big screen. So, what went wrong? How did one of Disney's most anticipated live-action remakes turn into an industry-wide cautionary tale? And more importantly, was this downfall inevitable, or did Rachel Zegler unknowingly sabotage her own career? Let's break it down. In 2021, Disney announced Rachel Zegler as their new Snow White. At first, it seemed like a solid move. She was fresh off West Side Story, a Spielberg-backed hit, and she had the perfect Disney princess look. She had the talent, the industry backing, and a built-in audience that was eager to see what she would bring to the role. But this wasn't just a simple remake. Oh no. Disney had a plan, a modern take that ditched the prince, rewrote the dwarfs, and tried to make Snow White feminist. The idea was to give the classic tale a bold new direction, one that would supposedly appeal to modern audiences while shedding the elements that Disney deemed outdated. They wanted to push boundaries, take risks, and position Snow White as something fresh and progressive. Now, changing things up isn't always bad. Hollywood reinvents stories all the time. But Disney severely underestimated just how much people loved the original Snow White, not just as a fairy tale, but as a cherished piece of cinematic history. The moment details about the updated version leaked, backlash began brewing. Fans weren't just skeptical, they were outright furious. The film, once a highly anticipated project, suddenly became one of Disney's most controversial remakes before a single frame had even been released. It didn't help that Disney had already been struggling with its live-action adaptations, with several failing to capture the magic of their animated counterparts. This one, it seemed doomed before it even began. Enter Rachel Zegler, who didn't exactly help her case. In a now infamous interview, she basically laughed at the original film, calling it weird and creepy because Snow White falls in love with a prince. She proudly stated, "We're not doing that anymore," making it sound like Snow White was some outdated relic of the past. But the way she said it, casually dismissing a beloved classic, only fueled the fire. Fans weren't just taken aback. They felt disrespected. It wasn't just a critique of an old movie. It was as if she was sneering at the very thing that made Snow White an icon in the first place. And let's be honest, if you're starring in a remake of a cherished Disney film, maybe don't mock the original. Now, here's the thing. Fans weren't mad at the idea of a stronger female lead. They were mad that Rachel seemed to be trashing the very film she was supposed to be celebrating. There's a difference between reimagining a story and outright disrespecting its legacy, and to many, Rachel's words crossed that line. The backlash was instant. Social media exploded with outrage. YouTube channels dissected her comments, and Twitter, or X, was flooded with memes mocking her stance. And let's just say, the internet doesn't forget. Screenshots and clips of her interviews spread like wildfire, ensuring that her words would haunt her career for a long time. To make matters worse, her attitude in subsequent interviews didn't help. She often came off as dismissive, even arrogant, about the controversy, refusing to acknowledge the backlash and doubling down on her remarks. Rather than trying to repair the damage, she only made it worse, solidifying the perception that she was out of touch with Disney's core audience. Fast forward to the film's first trailer drop, and oh boy, it was a disaster. The CGI looked off, the 7 dwarfs were replaced with random, diverse background characters, and it felt nothing like the classic tale people knew. The visual effects were unsettling, the cinematography lacked the signature Disney magic, and the entire tone of the trailer felt oddly disconnected from the charm of the original. Instead of excitement, fans felt a mix of confusion and disappointment. Within hours, the trailer was flooded with dislikes, brutally roasted on social media, and quickly became one of Disney's most embarrassing PR moments. Reaction videos popped up across YouTube, dissecting every flaw, while Twitter, or X, was overrun with memes ridiculing the movie's new direction. It wasn't just a few unhappy fans. It was an avalanche of backlash. Even mainstream news outlets began reporting on the controversy, highlighting the overwhelming negative reception. The internet had already been side-eyeing the project, but now, it was full-on mockery mode. People weren't just skeptical anymore, they were actively rooting for the film to fail. To make matters worse, insider reports suggested that Disney had gone through multiple rewrites and reshoots, further raising concerns about the quality of the final product. The more people saw, the less they wanted to see it. Now, you'd think after all this, Rachel might take a step back, read the room, and maybe do some damage control. Nope. Instead, She doubled down, making even more tone-deaf comments, dismissing criticism as overblown and acting like the backlash didn't exist. One of the worst moments? She posted about the Hunger Games, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, bragging about being in the #OneMovie, while Snow White was flopping. People saw it as her trying to distance herself from Disney's disaster, but it just made things worse. Instead of being seen as a savvy actress moving on, it came off as arrogant and ungrateful. But she didn't stop there. She continued to make light of the controversy in interviews, seemingly rolling her eyes at the backlash and acting as if fans were just being dramatic. At one point, she even joked about how people will forget about this in a year, which only fueled the anger further. Rather than trying to rebuild goodwill, she kept alienating the very audience she once hoped to win over. Even when some media outlets tried to defend her, claiming that her words were being misinterpreted, Rachel refused to clarify or soften her stance. Instead, she leaned further into the idea that the whole thing was ridiculous, as if she was above the criticism. The result? Fans, who were once merely annoyed, now actively disliked her. Social media exploded with even more memes mocking her, and even some of her former supporters started to turn their backs. By the time Disney tried to do damage control, it was already too late. Rachel had dug herself into a hole that no PR spin could fix. At this point, Disney was scrambling. They tried re-editing marketing materials, delaying the release, and even throwing Rachel under the bus by making it seem like her comments weren't approved by them. They backpedaled, tried reframing the narrative, and even made desperate attempts to shift the public's focus elsewhere. But it was too late. People had already lost interest, or worse, were watching just a hate watch, fueling even more negative press and viral ridicule. And let's talk about the movie itself. By the time it hit theaters, no one cared. Fans were done with it, families weren't excited, and Disney's modern reimagining had officially backfired. Ticket sales were abysmal, critics weren't impressed, and word of mouth only made things worse. Instead of being an empowering reboot, it became a symbol of everything people disliked about Hollywood's forced reimaginings. What was supposed to be a groundbreaking update to a classic fairy tale turned into a cautionary tale about what happens when a studio completely loses touch with its audience. As expected, the numbers were bad. Opening weekend was a flop, and by week 2, theaters were already pulling showtimes. The film's box office numbers plummeted, and audience interest vanished almost overnight. What was initially hyped as a major Disney event quickly became an industry-wide embarrassment. By the third week, some theaters were barely bothering to schedule showings, and Disney had already shifted focus to its next big project, quietly sweeping Snow White under the rug. The movie, once positioned as a groundbreaking update to a beloved classic, had officially become one of Disney's most expensive failures. Then came the rumors. Whispers that Rachel was being dropped from future projects, including a Toy Story 5 role and even a possible Pirates of the Caribbean reboot. Industry insiders claimed she was now seen as a PR risk, with studios hesitant to attach her to major franchises. Suddenly, the girl who was supposed to be Disney's new IT girl was being ghosted by the industry. Casting directors were allegedly steering clear, fearing the backlash that came with her name. Reports surfaced that even projects she had already signed onto were being reassessed, with some studios quietly backing away. For Rachel, the writing was on the wall. Hollywood had moved on, and she was left dealing with the fallout of a controversy that had completely overshadowed her once promising career. So, what did we learn? Rachel Zegler's downfall is a textbook case of Hollywood ego, bad PR, and an industry miscalculation colliding in the worst way possible. You can be talented. You can have the full force of Hollywood pushing you as their next big thing, but if you alienate the very audience you need to succeed, your career can crumble shockingly fast. This saga serves as a harsh reminder that no amount of industry backing can protect you from public perception. The entertainment world is unforgiving, and once the audience turns on you, regaining their trust is next to impossible. What happened to Rachel Zegler isn't just about one bad movie. It's about what happens when an actor, a studio, and a fan base collide in the worst way possible, creating a PR disaster that will be studied for years to come.